putting pieces together till this very fort you see here got to this very stage. But it was built at the time when the slave trade was at the highest level. Because of that, they decided to build the dungeons in Capecoast Castle much bigger to accommodate at least 1,300 African men and women to maximum 1,500.
Wow.
Not all from Ghana. They brought people from several parts of Africa. But the biggest number of Africans that got themselves here were taken from West Africa.
Mm-hmm.
From lots of West African nations, they were made to walk. They walked barefooted, either tied up or in shackles and chains. As they moved, people that were found very sick and weak had to be abandoned in the middle of nowhere. But if I am going to abandon them, I know they will go back home and tell what I've done to them. That is why they were executed. They tie them to trees. It's either you die of thirst and hunger, or a wild animal passing by will just feast on you. They came here with the very strong ones, and when they got to Capecoast Castle, before they sent them into the dungeons, each group of people that came here were owned separately by lots of British companies. So to avoid confusions amongst themselves over the ownership of the people, these companies then branded their captives. After branding them, men were sent straight down to the men's dungeon, women to the women's dungeon, where they spent at least 2 weeks or 3 months waiting for the arrival of the slave ships.
Mm.
And in the dungeons, they did almost everything. I use the word almost because sometimes they brought them out to eat and to work just to exercise them. But most of everything was done in the dungeon. Only that when the transatlantic slave trade started, there was that trade known as triangular trade between 3 continents, Europe, Africa, and the Americas. What did the Europeans do? They brought in very cheap European items all the way down to Africa. They brought cheap European items all the way down to Africa. No, they are not joining us. They are going into the museum. So as I was saying, when they brought the cheap items here to Africa, they used these stuff to get gold, ivory, spices, African men, women, and lots of other African valuables. They moved it from Africa to the Americas. In the Americas, they left African men and women on the fields working, growing sugarcane, cotton, tobacco, and all kinds of stuff. Then they would take sugar, which was known as white gold, because amongst Europeans, sugar was very much essential and important commodity. Then they would take coffee, rum, and other things as well. They fed the industries in Europe with all these things. Money that was made from it was what they used in building today's Europe and the United States of America we see now. Moving from Europe to Africa was known as the outward passage. From Africa to the Americas was known as the middle passage. And from the Americas back to Europe was known as the inward passage.
Mm.
Well, in the castle we have the men's dungeon, the women's dungeon, the door of no return, the female punishment cell, the condemned cell. That's the worst. The condemned cell was designed for African men that always chose to fight. They stood up for themselves. They fought regardless of anything, trying to get out of the castle. The Europeans became fed up with these men. They will beat them to become very weak. They put them in shackles and chains. They throw them into that room. Without food and water, without light and air, you stay there until you lose your life. And when you die, they make sure the people in the dungeon are here at the courtyard to witness the dead bodies being carried out and thrown into the sea to serve as a deterrent to them that you can't get up and do the same thing just as they did. Let's start a tour by visiting.
Door of no return, guys.
Year of Return is being celebrated in Ghana.
Well, tell us,
Do you
Sebastian.
know why?
Why, Sebastian?
Well,
400 years.
in 1619, the first slave ship from Ghana was recorded to have landed in the United States of America. So 2019 is marking the 400th year of the first slave ship landing in the United States of America.
How long did the journey take?
Well, it took them about 6 weeks or 3 months. That is why Ghana is celebrating the year of return 2019 Ghana, asking all Africans in the diaspora to go down to the country to reconnect with their ancestors and to learn about their history. And if they want to, they should move into the country.
Yes.
So the men originally will exit through a door of no return on that point. But it had to be blocked off because the seawater, which was far, was nearing the building. So they sealed it, they opened to this one, the men started coming out this way, using the door of no return on the female side. And right here, this small door or the small room was a female punishment cell where women were held. Those that will not allow the Europeans to touch a hair on their body, they fight back. The Europeans will put them there. Maximum 1 week. You get food and water once a day. And when you are sober, they let you go back into the dungeon. Please, let's come and talk about the female dungeons.
Yeah, we are entering the female slave dungeon. There's a step down. Careful, y'all.
Yeah, step.
This is the women's cell, guys.
Two parts. This one is the one on the opposite side. 150 African women will stay here at least, maximum 250. So if we are talking male to female ratio, we can say 10:3 or 10:5. The men were 1,000, women were 300 or sometimes 500. They always got more men than women because they needed more field hands, more strong field labor. But then the women slept, urinated, defecated, menstruated here. In general, men and women only had pieces of cloth around their waist. That's all they had for 3 months of their stay here, for 3 months aboard a slave ship, till they made it out there. Here in the dungeons of the castle, as I mentioned earlier, they never took a single shower. Sometimes they had to splash water on the people to cool the people down. Cooling people down never means you're washing anybody up, it means cooling down. So what will happen at that time of the month when all these beautiful African women are supposed to be menstruating? Without sanitary towels provided, then it means that piece of cloth you have is what you have to be using in handling your business for 3 months here, for 3 months on the ship, till you make it over there. But constantly, Europeans came in here, picked African women up, and abused them sexually. So much so that sometimes they found some of them pregnant. If you are found pregnant in the dungeons, they have houses out of the castle where they take care of you. You will have a child. The child will be cared for. If they take a liking to you as a woman, you stay there, you don't go back into the dungeons. But what if they don't like you? You go back here, they ship you abroad. They educated the kids. They grew up becoming clerks, secretaries, interpreters, and all of that for the Europeans around here. Bridging the gap between the local African community and the European community. And that really helped the Europeans around here immensely. But what about the women that found themselves pregnant aboard a slave ship? Majority of them lost their lives. Because the conditions aboard the ship was much, much horrible than that of the dungeons by far. If you find yourself at the bottom of the deck, people at the top will be puking, others defecating and urinating, and women will be menstruating, all kinds of stuff like that. The stench alone can kill a pregnant woman. By the time the ships arrived in the Americas, out of 100%, about 40% of the people starved. And whether people died or survived, know that the Europeans never lost money, all in the name of insurance. Here in Africa, they never bought Africans with money, but over the people paid hundreds and thousands of dollars to buy the people. And wonderful guys, the Europeans did not do the slavery for just a year or two, but for almost 400 years on the continent of Africa. They made so much money that even today their children are enjoying from that wealth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
We know that.
Barclays.
And wonderful guys,
All the banks,
please
slavery.
know that the transatlantic slavery was so lucrative that people that participated in it made so much money. And it is said to be one of the most profitable businesses ever surfaced on the earth. Let's go out there. Door of no return. Right at the top. Whoever walked out of the door never ever returned. You go out of the door, you lose it all. Your name is taken away. Your dignity is taken away. Your freedom is gone. Family, property, everything is taken away from you. You have your life. But the question here is, the life you have, is it even guaranteed? They walk out. The stairs we're going to see how they happens to be the very original stairs they used down It's partially renovated so that it will still stay there. Whenever they went down the stairs, the soil there on the shore became the last African soil African men and women ever touched on the African continent. Because the boats were there. If you get aboard a boat, you don't touch the African soil again. You find yourself in a new world. And an estimated number of about 4 million Africans were said to have walked out of the door of no return here in Capecoast Castle within the period of about 200 years of the slave trade by the British in this very building. But of all the Africans that left the African continent, it was the Portuguese that took the biggest number. Out of 100%, about 47% was taken by the Portuguese. The British took about 26%. The French took about 11%. But then most of them, the Portuguese took, were sent to South America. And in the whole world, if you are talking of African population, you realize that Nigeria has got the biggest African population. But Brazil comes second behind Nigeria in terms of African population in the world, which means there are more black folks living in Brazil than even Ghana, which is an entirely African country. And this is what we are talking about. About 70% of people that went through Capecoast Castle were African nations. And from here directly, the British were taking their people to Barbados, Jamaica, Grenada, British Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, Bahamas, St. Thomas, St. Kitts, St. Lucia, St. Vincent. Some ended up in Montserrat. Others were taken to Haiti as well. Then South and North Carolina, Alabama, Virginia, Mississippi, Georgia, Tennessee, New York, and several other parts. So the visit of the Obamas here was not just a coincidence, because Michelle Obama had traced her ancestry all the way down to this port, and she came here to see where the ancestors were taken from, with her mother, her daughters, and the husband came to support her. Other than that, I would say that Obama belongs to Kenya and the United States of America. He has got more ties with this country. But what about Michelle Obama? I say she's Kenyan, and I know none of you can do anything about it.
So you guys are walking through.
Yes, sir.
They're coming through the door of no return. And they're going to walk back out. Something that our ancestors couldn't do. David, I'm going to need you to walk out so that I can catch you walking out. Who else is back there? Chris, come on. Thanks.
In 2009 when they visited Capecoast Castle. And this one is the most important plaque you can find in this building. The same applies to the St. George's Castle or Elmina Castle. You know, in the year 1992, something happened in the world where a group of chiefs and the government of Ghana traveled to the United States to have a ceremony which was known as Fihankra, which means we left here and we never said goodbye. And that is true. All the Africans that were taken out of here left without saying goodbye to anyone. So they did that ceremony, and afterwards they came to realize that, well, if the people left and never said goodbye, it was the fault of some people. And they recognized the fact that their ancestors might have played a very important role in everything. So they decided to come out and say sorry to the public for what happened. That is the purpose of this plaque. In everlasting memory of the anguish of our ancestors, may those who died rest in peace, may those who return find their roots. May humanity never again perpetrate such injustice against humanity. We the living vow to uphold this. Please.
This is the men's dungeon, y'all. Ooh, it's a deep lane. Careful, big.
It's a big step. There you go. Please come by the left.
Okay.
Yes, that's better. No. No. And through the middle all the way down.
Okay. This is where the men were kept, y'all. This is the men's dungeon. This is where your ancestors were kept. This is where they laid. This is where they kept the men, slaves. Condemned cell for the men who were the strongest, who fought the hardest, to break down their spirits. This is the condemned cell, y'all. Wow.
No air here.
All right, so, folks, please allow me to move a little bit up to the other side. Thank you very much.
So everyone, this was a very